going to introduce myself. My name is Emma Claire Foley. I'm the director of the campaign Defuse Nuclear War within RootsAction, which aims to reduce the risk that nuclear weapons will be used again and to work for their eventual elimination. And we're excited to present this film screening and panel tonight. I'm gonna in a moment pass the mic over to Vahid Razavi, who created this film we're about to see. But first I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about him. Um, he's the director of ForeverPeaceNow and the author of Ethics in Tech and Lack Thereof. A longtime advocate for digital rights and human rights accountability. He's the founder of ForeverPeaceNow.com and ParentsPlead.com. So, approaching the many questions that the film deals with from several different angles. So I'm without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Vahid, and then we're going to start our screening of the film, which is 70 minutes long, at around 8:10 Eastern time for me, or 5:10 if you're on Pacific time.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you so much for organizing this RootsAction. Norman, Ryan, Bill, it's greatly appreciated. Thank you for attending tonight's event. I want to say that this film is a result of 16 years of working in Silicon Valley, of doing ethics and technology events, the holding Human Rights Day events, NSA Comedy Day events, and then later on, no ethics in big tech events. And it's a culmination of those events and segments that people participated in. And you can watch the entire segments of those films online with Norman and others, with Reverend Allen that you'll be hearing from, with Brett on our YouTube channel. And they're there for you to reference. And this film was launched for Human Rights Day in December 10th in Santiago, Chile. And I'm basically traveling and promoting the film, and it's a real honor to share it with you and answer your questions afterwards. So thanks for taking the time to tune in tonight, wherever you are. It's really appreciated, and thank you, Emma.
Great. Well, now we're gonna have a Q&A, or sorry, a panel discussion. And then we'll be taking your questions. So, please, use this time to add your questions to our Q&A feature. But our first speaker will be Vahid Razavi, who you've heard a lot from during the film. And I won't repeat the introduction. I'm sure we want to use this time as well as we can to kind of talk through the many different issues we've heard about in the film. So, Wahid, take it away.
Thank you so much, Emma, and thanks to RootsAction and Norman and the great folks at World Beyond War. I want to also thank all the viewers that joined us tonight. So thanks for taking the time to watch this film, and please do ask your questions. One thing I want to highlight is the ending of this movie that we don't talk about, which is it's in the memory of Rouzbeh Vadi. Rouzbeh was the son of my cousin, and he was hung to death in August 6th of this past year in Iran. He spent 18 months in jail. He was a nuclear scientist, a brilliant scientist with tons of published papers. He went to Vienna twice to represent Iran at the IAEA, and he was accused of treason and espionage, even though he was in jail during the 12-day war with Israel. And they broke his ribs, they broke his legs. They took his mother to jail, and they took a picture of his mother and forced a confession out of him, and then they hung him on August 6th. He was sentenced to death by two judges, and both judges were father and son, so nepotism, Judge Salavati's. And the reason I mention this is because two wrongs don't make a right. The U.S. commits atrocities in all the wars that I highlighted, and all the crimes that we're seeing all across the globe. And the Iranian regime is committing atrocities and oppressiveness towards its own citizens. And they're both wrong. You know, There are political prisoners in Iran that are being hung. There are prisoners in the United States that, because of their stance against Palestine and the genocide that's taking place, are in ICE detention, are being deported. There are people in the United Kingdom because of supporting Palestine action and holding a sign, a grandma that's 80 years old going to jail. There are people in Germany. And we need to think about all these political prisoners that are being oppressed. When we talk about the golden rule, it applies to everyone. It's we don't want to have this happen to anybody. We don't want to see the starvation in Gaza. We also don't want to see political prisoners in Iran. There have been people in Iran that have been under house arrest, like Mousavi and Karoubi and others. I'm not talking about the opposition outside of the country. I'm talking about Iranians in Iran. And that needs to stop. That really needs to stop for a republic. At the same time, the horrors of Gaza need to stop. These wars need to stop. And the war of U.S. against Iran is an illegal war. Just like the war that they are committing in Lebanon, and just the war like the wars they committed in Syria and Sudan and in Libya. Every single one of them is an illegal war. And two wrongs don't make it right. They don't make it right. And then the other thing that I want to highlight are the tech companies' roles in all of these. People come to me and they ask me, what is it that we can do? Great, you got this site, you're tracking dead people. There's now over 142,000 names of dead from before and after October 7th. From Iran during the Green Revolution, during Women's Life Freedom Movement, during the bombardments with the U.S., from the protests. What now? Well, we need to keep track of these people, but we also need to bring prosecution. We need to empower the justice system. The thing is I don't believe in fighting with violence. I believe in fighting with justice in the court system. The people that created these weapons that we're seeing, the drones, the bombs, the targeting systems, the AI, the people in Silicon Valley, in the tech sector, they need to be brought to justice. And if the ICC and the ICJ are overwhelmed and they go under 2-year sanctions because their funds gets cut off, well, there are other venues. There's the concept of universal justice that countries can exert and bring these executives to justice. Back in World War II, Hitler was supported by Alcoa, by Ford Motor Company, by Standard and Oil, helping refine oil, by IBM punch card machines, by GM that brought in Opel, by ITT. Now company names have changed. It's not IBM, it's Amazon. It's not Opel, or Ford or ITT. It's Oracle and Microsoft and Palantir. It's people like Alex Karp that want to go around the world spraying fentanyl and have drones. These are the real threat to society. It's their AI and technology that's a threat to society. These executives are complicit in genocide. They're the ones that need to be brought before a court. So I have a petition on the site. It's simple. I'm trying to get signatures for it. Anybody can go to the website ForeverPeaceNow or Parents Plea. There's an English version, there's a Spanish version. It's actually to the Spanish government for people to sign so we can get this investigated by the Spanish government. Why Spanish government? What's one judiciary? What's one set of investigators to deal with? Not 14 nations or 9 nations with ICC and ICJ. If it's effective, there could be a Spanish arrest warrant issued, a European arrest warrant issued, because they're one of the 5 most influential European nations in the EU. I don't expect the U.S. government to turn these people over for justice, but at least their planes would be grounded. Their assets could be taken away from them or put on hold. They couldn't take their boats in the Mediterranean. Right now, Microsoft today announced that they fired their head of Azure because they killed Palestinians using Microsoft platform. Well, in reality, if you want to go after Microsoft, that guy from Azure is going to go and work for Google or Amazon or a defense contractor. So we need to bring justice to these people. And we need to name them, and we need to go and investigate them and bring justice. And the way to do that is through a petition to the Spanish courts or to other jurisdictions to other jurisdictions that can bring charges against these people. So when Interpol issues a red card, they can't go traveling everywhere to Davos and to various conferences all around the world. And also, it could help break up the tech companies. The Palestinian data is being stored in Netherlands, in Germany, in Spain. These companies have infrastructure in these places. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's time to act. I have done enough saying in the film. I'll just answer your questions. And I want to thank Norman and Reverend Allen and all the people that participated in this documentary. And thank you for taking the time to watch it. And by the way, no journalist has covered our documentary. No film festival has decided to show this film. So if you shared with friends and shared a petition, it would mean a lot. That would be a huge support. So thanks again.
Great, thank you. So our next panelist is going to be Norman Solomon, who you saw in the film, and I'm sure many of you have heard speak previously. So Norman is co-founder and national director of RootsAction and founder of the Institute for Public Accuracy, immersed in anti-war, social justice, and environmental movements since the late 1960s. He's the author of a dozen books, including War Made Invisible, War Made Easy, and Made Love, Got War. Norman?
Well, thanks a lot, Emma Claire, and thanks to Vahid for this film and everybody participating tonight. A few minutes ago, I jotted down something that Daniel Ellsberg says near the close of the film. He said, "The odds are against us, but the possibilities are there." And I think that's what our gathering is about tonight. That's what millions of people, I think literally millions of people around the world, are proceeding on the basis of. There aren't a lot of illusions around. We know that the odds don't look good. But as Dan said, the possibilities are there. And this film really addresses, and people organizing are really addressing the way in which possibilities can be made into realities. If I was going to try to come up with a very succinct executive summary of what Vahid said in the last few minutes and an underlying message of the film, I would say it's that a single standard of human rights is essential. As he said, two wrongs don't make a right. Thousands of wrongs don't make anything right. And it's not about really platitudes. It's about seeing what the results are of the status quo, of the military-industrial complexes in various countries, the prevarications, the outright lies, the distortions, the objectifications and portrayals of other people, of other cultures, of other countries, of religions and races as somehow implicitly or explicitly not worthwhile as human beings. And that's really been the premise, unspoken, of the so-called war on terror for the last 25 years. Something I realized just a couple of years ago is that almost every person who has been killed by Pentagon firepower since the so-called war on terror was launched, almost every one of those people have been people of color. And it's hidden in plain sight. It's really, I found, not possible, or at least hasn't been possible yet, to get a major media outlet to really focus on that, even for one day, for one high-profile article. It's not because the people in Afghanistan or Iraq or Yemen or Sudan are being bombed because they are people of color, but the fact that they are people of color has made it easier politically and in terms of US media and politics to start those wars and sustain those wars. And we face the reality that the United States by far is the most powerful military force in the world. It doesn't let other aggressor countries off the hook, but it does mean that the United States remains, as Martin Luther King said in 1967, the most violent country in the world in terms of inflicting murder and wounding and terrorizing people around the planet. That's a lot of what I think about when I watch this film that we've just seen. That we didn't choose to be living in the world at this situation in this time. We didn't live, if we live in the United States, we didn't choose to be living in, so to speak, the belly of the military-industrial beast that the United States is. But if we do have a single standard of human rights, and if we proceed to organize on that basis, I think, as Dan Ellsberg said, the possibilities are there. It's naturally easy to get discouraged. But as Antonio Gramsci said, what we need is pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will. So it's not very credible to say that the future looks rosy, but on the other hand, if we act as though we are doomed, if we're fatalistic, then that goes nowhere. So fatalism is nowhere, false optimism is nowhere, but realism is really the way to go when it's combined with humanistic dedication. So that's what I think this film, among many other things, is telling us. And thanks again to everybody who is with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Norman. Our final speaker for the panel is going to be Reverend Martin Todd Allen. He's the Associate Minister for the Church for the Fellowship of All People. He's been a prison, hospital, and military chaplain and is a proud father currently residing in Jackson, Mississippi. So whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you very much. Vahid was making fun of me recently how I take one book and I hold on to it. I read it and so many times the one book that I was reading in the documentary was the Surveillance Capitalism, a very important book. It's kind of my Bible to understand what's going on in the world right now. The book I'm reading right now is called The Myth of American Innocence. And I think it's important for us to talk about the myth of American innocence. And this documentary exposes our guilt and what happens when we assume that technology is somehow innocent, right? And that our government is neutral. And so that leads us to the point, as this author says, that Americans have come to believe in a story that all capacity for goodness abides here in the United States and within our walls, while absolute evil stalks us out there somewhere. And that myth of innocence really was demonstrated recently at my church, because my church accepted this money from the Homeland Security to put up surveillance cameras in the parking lot of the church. It's a $110 million program across the United States right now to protect the security of religious organizations by putting security cameras in the parking lots of these churches. I do not believe in the neutrality of government, and I don't even believe in the innocence of churches. But I don't believe that they're going to be able to maintain this surveillance without doing it. Now, as I read more about it, each church makes a decision to whether or not they're going to allow the information to be sent to their local police, but which every church is going to assume, again, in the innocence of their local police department. If I just send the information, they're going to find if there's somebody on our property. But it's just one more example of this surveillance capitalism just creeping into all areas of our lives, led by the government, led by the tech companies. But I appreciate this documentary and Vahid's work by showing us how this is a singular march, against our privacy, against our freedoms, and this example is an example of how it's a violation of our religious freedom, even to to put these cameras up at our churches. I was a voice of one crying in the wilderness at my church when I protested these cameras, as as people are. But it's so hard to argue with Americans who have this assumption, that the gov if let me just be real clear. It's so hard to argue with white Americans who assume that the government is on their side, and so anyway, I thank you for pointing out our lack of innocence in this documentary and all the work that you do, because that's the only way we're going to be able to face our, our guilt, right? Is to look at what we've done honestly in the face and look what we're capable of doing. It's the only way we're going to change things. So my one of my most educational points in this documentary is the comedian who said that she believes in monopoly, right? She believes in monogamy for herself and polygamy for herself and monogamy for the other people. That's that same attitude, that double standard. And I think our government's the worst of that, right? To have double standards that people maintain. But thank you again, Vahid, for your documentary and all of your work, and thank you everyone on the panel.
Thank you for taking part in it, Reverend Allen and Norman.
Thanks. And that book is Surveillance Capitalism, which I believe is by Shoshana Zuboff. Definitely a good read. We have 22 minutes left in this event, so we're going to do the question and answer session now. We've got a couple questions in the chat, so I'm going to read them out, and we can, panelists, you can all address them as you'd like. So our first one would be that recently Microsoft fired the head of Microsoft Israel after The Guardian revealed that Israel used Microsoft's technology to support mass surveillance of Palestinian phone calls. Is this indicative of a change in Silicon Valley, or is it simply due to the servers being located in Europe, therefore European human rights standards were inadvertently applied to Palestinians?
Can I take a shot at that?
Go ahead.
So I honestly think that in Silicon Valley, everybody knows the technology that's Israel is using, Project Nimbus and Google and Oracle and Palantir and Microsoft Cloud 4. They're using it to surveil on Palestinians. They're using it as the brains to do the targeted killing. They're trying to wash their hands and say that we didn't know. But executive briefings, the documents that I used to prepare, talk about how the technology is being deployed and used within a particular account and within the company. So these executives actually do know what's going on. That's why they build signals in their billing systems to let the world know or let each other know when they're being investigated. And that's why a petition is needed to find out and investigate these tech companies' executives as to how much they did know. Just saying the data resided in Netherlands and Germany and Spain, great. That means that infrastructure that resides in Spain should be investigated. And it's not just Microsoft. That guy from Microsoft is going to get a job at Amazon next, or Google next, or go to DXC Technology next, or HP Enterprise, or another company. They just, it's a revolving door, or go work for a lobbyist, or, they need to be brought to justice. And there are a lot of these people out there. It's not just one or two. So, unless we investigate them, unless universal justice applies, and Spain is not the only country. Canada could do it. Any country with a conscience can investigate these guys. They have infrastructures across many countries, and it could help break up the tech giants. They have assets, they have data centers. This is one thing that I'm addressing in my latest book, No Ethics in Big Tech, and how we can fight back. Is how do we break up these tech monopolies? How do we break up our dependency on these tech giants? And I'll make the book available for free. Make it under Creative Commons. It's going to be translated to Spanish and distributed. So I'm not trying to make money from this at all. I just want to see a change.
Okay, so our next question has to do with translating the insights in the film into effective organizing. The question is, how can we work toward the peace we all want?
Well, I'll jump in. I mean, it's a great question, and it's one that is requiring just a multiplicity of answers. I mean, sometimes I've heard, why can't we all just get together and have one big organization? But that's sort of like, why don't we have a forest with just trees? It just doesn't work that way. We need a healthy ecology of movements, of relationships, of organizing capacities and cultures and all that. And so I just really encourage people to identify what they're comfortable doing, what they're drawn to doing. We have many different temperaments, skills, tendencies, capacities, and there are organizations out there, uh, literally thousands in the United States alone, really tens of thousands, local, regional, national. And it's about proceeding as though we have no assurance of the results. And of course, we want good results, but that shouldn't be the criterion for whether we proceed. We have no control over the results, but we do have control over what we do. So that would be my 2 cents right now.
Anybody else want to jump in?
There's so many wonderful organizations to join, but also you can also act as an individual. There are things you can do. If you work in these technology companies, if you see things that are wrong, if you can point them out, yeah, there's risk associated with that, but it's rewarding because it could make a serious, significant change. And people in the tech sector in Silicon Valley need to be aware of that they could really improve the lives of so many people if they speak up and not be silent. They already got the paycheck, use it for good at least once in a while.
Okay. So now I'm gonna switch over to my own questions, but if anybody wants to add a question in the chat, it is open. So I'm gonna ask our panelists for their thoughts on the connections between consumer technology and military technology. The film obviously covers a lot of ground, but I think that there's sometimes a disconnect that people experience between their own experience of technology and the awareness or lack of awareness that these same companies that produce our phones, our smart devices, our XYZ, and whose presence is becoming unavoidable in our daily lives are also, major military contractors. So any thoughts that any of you have about that connection, how to, make it clearer for people, how that sort of ecosystem works, right? Like, I think would be very interesting to hear.
Oh. Vahid, will you start? You certainly have been
Sure,
immersed in
happy
this.
to. I'm happy to. I mean, you look at the foundation of internet. It started off of a DARPA project, and it grew from there. You look at the Meta glasses now that everybody's promoting, and they expect to sell millions of. It's a surveillance tool more than anything else, and its harmful effects are not just for the people losing their privacy. They're being caught in, being used in restrooms and private places, and having their credit card numbers and things like that. But it's also the people in Kenya or elsewhere, the Nairobi, that have to watch those footage. Meta just laid off 1,100 people because they were whistleblowers, a couple of them, and they said, well, the kind of footage we're watching all day on these Meta glasses is pretty horrible of what we have to identify. So the consumer products are really surveillance products. The license plate readers that Reverend Allen talks about in the church are being fed into a federal system, and ICE has access to that information too. And tomorrow, if they want to go after immigrants and your, gardener or whoever is providing community services, they can too. There's nothing that says that, flock cameras have any kind of security on it. And they position it as, will make your house safer. Ring cameras, flock cameras, all these surveillance tools as just for a way for government and big tech to keep it track of you. You know, about Pokemon Go, that game that went around and everybody would identify Pokemons all over, was actually used to map better than Google Maps different places on Earth that they didn't have maps for. So you thought they were playing a game, you would buy credits, but in reality, they're using it for mapping technologies.
Well, something I've had, the first person I ever read or heard saying that our smartphones were surveillance devices was somebody who was being hugely vilified, and that was Julian Assange. And he was just ahead of the realization that became more clear to so many people later on, and Edward Snowden helped us understand it, that the marriage, if you will, between the big tech corporations and governments, not just the US government, has been going on for a really long time. And so the same companies that are the most exalted, that have these billions of dollars worth of worth on the market, they are totally immersed in consumer marketing and in militarism and in surveillance. And it's really clear that there are no scruples there. The visionary media analyst Robert McChesney, who we miss very much, passed away a couple of years ago. He wrote a book called Digital Disconnect a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago. And he really mapped out the reality. He said all these startups and the mythology of the Google people and starting in their garage and all that, he said they have two choices. They can either go out of business or they can collapse themselves into a predatory corporate system. And that's what we've seen. I mean, what was the saying? Don't be evil. I mean, they don't even say that anymore because they are so. And the information, I mean, James Bamford and others were writing 8-10 years ago about how, for instance, huge Silicon Valley corporations were not only contracting for surveillance with governments, but they were also completely on a two-way relationship with Israeli digital leading edge firms. And so that's happening. And just to go more to that point, I mean, for instance, Apple has such a great reputation. What's the guy? Tim Cook. Meta, Facebook, Amazon, they have the smiley face, they got the trucks going around, they have all the advertisements. The mask totally fell off hours after Trump won in November 2024, when these consumer marketing huge corporations had the head of them, the top. We had Mark Zuckerberg, you had Jeff Bezos tweeting out massive congratulations, very powerful, unequivocal congratulations to Donald Trump, saying, just, you're going to lead America forward. We look forward to working with you. And that says it all.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you look at all these apps that we have now. The NSA doesn't need to spy on you on a account on a AT&T building. They can just buy the data from data brokers, and they spend billions on buying data. All the apps spy on you anyway. So the apps that you download from App Store or Google Play or what have you, and you put it on your phone, do the same exact thing. They capture data, location data, and they aggregate it and they sell it to data brokers. And that's a huge revenue model of all these online games that your kids play. Instagram just removed encryption on its messaging for no reason whatsoever. They could have continued to provide it. Um, I mean, there's a reason why our cameras doesn't have a cover to be able to cover the camera, or same with the camera on our computer. It's always on. You don't really know if it's hacked or not, or who's watching you or not. When you have your computer open, or you have your phone with you, I can't cover my phone's cameras. It's got cameras on the front and back. So, and then you have organizations like the NSO group, like you mentioned, out of Israel, that, poor Khashoggi, even with your phone off, going into an embassy, you can get hacked. And they're listening. They're listening to this conversation. They're recording every conversation you have, regardless of the app you're in and the kind of encryption you use. And even when there is encryption, even when there was RSA and they had, they sold the back door to the NSA so they could spy on you. So, you know, my thing is, if you're an advocate and if for human rights, just be out in the open with it with your friends and family and talk openly, because the government has already got all the information on you anyways. So don't live in a state of fear.
Yeah, yes. So I have a response to that. I think your question, Emma, was, what is the connection between consumer technology and the military industrial complex? And I just look at my phone and I know how frustrated I am that they have planned obsolescence, right? There's we're so many years we've had a dozen different styles of charging, for all the different things, and they're getting closer to having one now. But what was the point of that? It was the capitalism of being able to make a profit over us buying all these different chargers, right? And then the planned obsolescence that our computers and our phones will be outdated. But I think there's no greater way to make money off planned obsolescence than building bombs, right? That's just, and so you don't need a justification for the war. You just need an opportunity to blow things up. And we're seeing it in Iran right now. It's just like, with no justification, every story changes about what we're doing, why we are blowing things up in Iran, and why Israel is blowing things up in people up in Lebanon. It's this planned obsolescence gone wild, right?
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, weapons have to be used. You can't have them sit in the desert for
Yes.
20 years. They
Yes.
have a shelf life too, and we need to
Yes.
produce the next quarter's result for Lockheed. We need to produce the next quarter's result for Raytheon. They need to have continuous business. So one world war gets shut down, Afghanistan goes away, we start Ukraine. Ukraine goes down, we need another one in Iran. Iran is bad, okay, now we can go after Greenland. We can send our navy to Cuba. Maybe, who knows, Canada would be next. So this cycle continues. And in regards to Iran specifically, what I wanted to say, it's not that the war is just unjustified. They intentionally attacked it twice in the middle of negotiations. So, I'm against violence and war. I have seen my own cousin's son die in the hands of the Islamic regime, and I'm still against the war because it kills only more people. And people rally around the flag in Iran, and the more extreme powers get in power. And, for what? So that Israel can build a greater Israel project? I mean, it's just insane. It's just insane. I'm sorry, Emma. I went off topic. I tend to do that.
That's all right. These questions are just meant to inspire conversation. So we have one more question. Sorry, it's getting late here. From our audience, we have, do you have any ideas or strategies to apply more pressure on senators and representatives to oppose war funding? Anybody who wants to can jump in.
Yeah, well, one thing that really is striking to me, that the government has very helpfully provided more than 1,000 congressional offices around the country. The chances are that anybody listening to this conversation lives pretty close to a district office of a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. And it's notable to me how rarely we make use of that proximity. The First Amendment gives us all sorts of rights that we have the capacity to assert, including putting together some picket signs and starting a picket line around the congressional offices. And it's amazing how just a few people doing that can have a lot of impact. It's something that we're cultivated not to do. I think it's an example of what we should be doing.
Now, ultimately, we have a couple of challenges. One is that the senators and congressmen make money off of the defense stocks and selling and buying shares of companies that they know are going to start wars and sell weapons. And the other thing is, of course, Citizen United, which has been the biggest detriment. to U.S. politics, because we have unlimited campaign dollars coming in from corporations. So the corporations don't represent the people; they represent. The senators don't represent the people; they represent the corporations that sponsor them. And as Robin Williams would say, every politician should have a jacket with its corporate sponsors on it, so we know which team they're rooting for. Kind of like a NASCAR jacket.
So, if there are no more questions, I think we can end there. I want to thank all the panelists for their contributions. Thanks Ryan, Bill, and everyone who put this panel together. Thank you so much to our audience for your continued attention and participation. All the websites and links we mentioned are in the chat currently if you'd like to be connected. And we can send out an email afterward, just putting all this right in front of you so you can continue to stay aware and stay involved. But with that, I think we can all say good night and thank you all one more time.
Thank you all. Sign the petition, please. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.